So the door is closed and I get the sign to go ahead. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this really beautiful spring evening here at hslu, Luzern University of Applied Sciences and Arts. I'm really happy to see so many faces in the room, also some external guests joining us tonight. For those who don't know me, my name is Thorsten Lange. I'm the head of the Institute of Architecture here at hslu. For a bit over a year, we have heard almost 10 different takes on collaborations as part of this Institute lecture series on collaborations. And these were positions by different international practitioners, by educators, but also by architectural historians. And I think while all of these positions were united in a way or sharing the view that collaboration as a mode of practice is really something that perhaps is a necessity in the present time in response to the increasing complexity perhaps of the challenges that we're confronting, and that this is no longer something that an individual perhaps or a sort of authoritative kind of position can resolve in the present day. I think they each presented very specific modes of kind of practicing collaboration, and I thought that was really fascinating to see, just kind of looking back at these talks. Each position in a way kind of added new layers, often highly situated experiences, showing that there is in a way kind of no single way of collaboration in the sense of a kind of easily replicable or easily reproducible formula. So maybe we could also say collaboration doesn't have a kind of singular form, but instead the focus really was on the kind of competencies, or the questions that came out of these talks were about the competency and skills that are required for collaboration, the tools that we use when we collaborate. Perhaps the need to define a shared purpose or a shared goal of collaboration, on negotiation as something that is inherent in this practice, and also that context, that the conditions for collaboration, that they in a way sort of really matter. And I think we'll probably hear a little bit more about that today. I mean, you come from a context, Barcelona, which now has a sort of really vibrant architectural scene, a lot of practices that also work in this mode. I'm really eager, I'm really curious to hear more about that. Closing off the series is Carlos Baiges Camprubí. I'll hand over to you in a second, but before that I'll pass on the mic to Sophie Park and Niels Müller, who will introduce our speaker for tonight and then also moderate the discussion afterwards. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you and good evening. We are here with Carlos Baiges. He flew in all the way from Barcelona this morning, so thank you for coming all the way. He graduated from the Escola Técnica Superior de Arquitectura in Barcelona, and he also holds a master's degree in urban sociology from the University of Amsterdam. He works mainly in the intersection of the social and the spatial, with a focus on citizen participation in architecture and urban planning, as well as the research in cooperative housing. He teaches in various international programs, such as, for example, tonight in the hslu, and also in other universities around the country and around the globe. I will hand over to Niels.
Thank you. He's one of the founding members of the non-profit architecture cooperative Lacol, which is based in Barcelona. I think a very inspiring organization that develops community infrastructures and uses architecture as a key tool for eco-social transition. Founded out of the economical crisis and the rising need for affordable housing in 2009, they advocate for a new and fairer form of coexistence, collaboration, and mutual support through architecture. And Lacol received several recognitions for its projects, such as La Borda, and has been selected several times for different architecture biennales, also in Venice. And we are very happy to have you here tonight, and the stage is yours. Thank you.
So thank you for the nice introduction, and thank you all for being here. I have to compete with this nice weather for you to be close in this room. And especially we all have to thank Heike, because she was insisting many times and I was rejecting many times, because we have a complicated agenda right now to travel abroad. But we finally made it like the last occasion that was possible. And I'm very happy to be here. Today it's also a special day for me or for us. This morning I was still in Barcelona, and today is Sant Jordi, is Saint George, which there's a celebration in Catalonia for, it's kind of the Valentine's Day, where you celebrate the love with your partners, but also it's the book day, because today died Cervantes and Shakespeare, so it's the world or European or whatever book day. So it's a very nice tradition today, where usually a very heteronormative version of it was that the man would give a rose to the woman that he loved, because when St. George killed the dragon from the blood, there was a rose, and then the woman would give a book to the man. So luckily now it's more free, and you can give a book to whoever you want. So I brought this book that is very related to the topic of today, because it's a book we wrote some years ago on participation. Now it's a little bit maybe outdated, maybe now there's better books, but at that time we couldn't find any book on how to collaborate with non-architects and include them into the process of designing architecture. So we wrote one, and it's the only one that we have in English. We have other books, but they are in Catalan and Spanish. So I gave one for the library, and later, I don't know how, but I will see one person will get the book at the end of the lecture. And every time that we go to universities, I like to also stress this fact that we are also a cooperative. Today we'll be talking about housing cooperatives, but also the fact that we are organized as an office as a workers cooperatives, no? And that's not the point of today. But if later anybody has any question on how we organize and how we deal with the office, I'm super happy to show that students that there's other examples that big firms with one name and 100 people hidden behind that name, no? Like in our case, we are all we started as students of architecture. Then we decided to stay during the economic crisis that hit very hard Spain, especially the construction sector. And we decided to create this office with this name that hides who is behind. And actually now, we are now 20 people, 11 of them we are the founding members. And this year we are actually starting the conversations on how to incorporate some of these workers that are been, some of them 3 years with us, so how they can be part of being members as well, no? So changing a little bit also how we work as architects. And today's topic is more focused obviously on the issue of collaboration, and we also obviously collaborate with many other professionals. Sometimes I like also to highlight that we collaborate a lot with economists and lawyers, because we always do innovative and challenging projects, and maybe these are practitioners that many other architects are not easy, or they don't have experience to collaborate with, but we learn a lot from them. But today is more about working with communities, especially focused on housing and around the topic of cooperative housing. And for me, it's a little bit kind of almost embarrassing to come from Spain to talk to Switzerland about housing cooperatives, because we have almost none right now compared to your long and rich history of housing cooperatives. We did have a lot of housing cooperatives, especially in the 70s, that built like tens of thousands of units all over Spain, also all around not in Barcelona, some in Barcelona, but especially around Barcelona, where there was a lot of migration from other parts of Spain. This is from El Prat, next to the airport, and this is in Mataró, a little bit north to Barcelona. But the problem is that all these housing cooperatives at that time, as all the social housing in Spain, was for sale. We are in a country, the opposite numbers of Switzerland. We have 80% of owner-occupied, 20% rent, because we did a lot of subsidized housing, a lot of social housing, but it was for sale. So now it's in the free market. We have barely 1% of social housing in Spain. So it's been always a problem, but especially the last decades, especially the last years, it's been dramatic, the access to housing. So that's why a new generation of cooperatives the last 10 years arose, learning from Switzerland, learning from Denmark, learning from Uruguay experiences. So it's more, the new generation of housing cooperatives, it's more similar to what you would understand basically as a housing cooperative. In our case, we have to call it Cooperativa en cesión de uso, so grant of use cooperative, to make a difference with the former cooperatives. Otherwise, people think that you can buy, but there you cannot buy. You are only entitled to have the use of the unit. It's a democratic organization where tenants have the vote and the voice, and the ownership is always collective. And it's very, very new for us. 10 years ago, there was only one project outside of Barcelona where 11 units, 30 people lived there in the rural area in a land that they buy. In Spain, there was also a couple of projects, but it's been growing in a very fast pace. And I don't have more updated numbers, but we have nowadays more than 60 projects in Catalonia, in the region of Catalonia, that have more than 1,000 units. More than 300 are people living in there already, and the others, they are under construction, but they will mostly finish this year. So these bars will change a lot, and now we will have still a small sector, but growing in numbers very big. Not in the rest of Spain, because there was not much public support, but in the region of Catalonia, there was a lot of support from especially municipalities and also the regional government. So in this very little period of time, we have now more than 20 projects in the city of Barcelona, 3 of them in private land, and the rest of them in public land, and then the rest of 60 scattered in different sizes of municipalities and rural areas. Outside of Barcelona is a little bit the opposite. Normally cooperatives, they can buy, they can have the means to buy and get the land by their own, and some municipalities are also giving the land. And we are very lucky because, we started with La Borda, which was actually the first of its kind in Spain, the first new construction, the first social housing cooperative. And then now we have 2 more in Barcelona that are already finished and people living in it. A 4th one in Manresa, in another municipality. And now we have 5 more that are under construction and will be finished the next months, and some more in the pipeline. So we managed to be part of this model and to learn a lot from it. So my focus today will be on how we work with these communities and why we think it's also important to engage them, and what are the opportunities and what are maybe the risks as well, and we can also talk about the limits and all this. So it's going to be organized on these 3 big, instead of projects, you will see different projects, but on these 3 big strategies that we think are interesting. So the first one, we are very focused now also in how we can, with our projects, reduce as maximum. We think we are in a moment that we need not only to build, but to build the less as possible, and with obviously the less footprint and everything, but also what we can avoid. And this is very interesting, how we can incorporate, in these projects we normally have the communities beforehand, so we can engage with them and discuss and learn from them. And one of the first things we did in this strategy of reducing was to learn how people moved. And we knew there was studies already that people in social housing tend to have less cars. We know that the city of Barcelona every year have less cars, and the goal of the city is to have even less cars. But still, we had some regulations from the 80s that were forcing us to give one or even more spots for cars in housing for each house. So we were actually being forced to deliver this house parking underneath, because Barcelona is a very dense city, so we don't have open air car parking. Is all underneath. Even in neighborhoods where it was studied that there was already a surplus there was more space for cars than cars. And we made a study. We showed the municipality and the political parties that we were subsidizing car space with social housing, that most people there didn't have a car, that the people who had a car already had choices to park in the neighborhood. So we convinced them. It was a long process of 2 years of negotiating, but we managed to change this regulation, and they lowered the minimum parking requirements for new construction. And La Borda was the first building not required to build underground parking, but now any building can apply for the same rules. So now we managed to change this regulation that would had cost us a lot of money and a lot of CO2 emissions as well. And now other cities in Spain are also incorporating this change in the regulation. Obviously, we try to reduce the footprint, and I also, this is quite obvious, and you can do that, let's say, in any project, but I always like to explain how people sometimes have the image that when you have to do these projects open with the community and democratic and discuss, and this is the case of La Borda. In La Borda, people don't vote. There's consensus, so you have to convince everybody to be on board of the decisions. And when we were choosing with the community what materials to use for the structure, there was the 3 options: concrete, steel, and wood, pros and cons. And wood was a little bit more expensive, but it was more healthy, it was faster. We built the ground floor is made of concrete, but then you have 6 stories of CLT, and it was all done in 6 weeks with only 4 workers and a crane. So it was very fast. We could speed up the construction, and we saved some money there. But it still was more expensive, and it was risky. When it was finished, it was the tallest building made of wood in Spain, 6 floors, so it's not a skyscraper. But we managed to convince the community, and they were super on board. So I think it's a good example of how these processes, they don't need to be more conservative. It's not that because it's democratic, because you have to convince everybody to be on board, that you would end up with a less risky solution or the most conservative. The opposite. Like actually, the next building that surpassed us with this record was another housing cooperative. So they proved that they are always the most advanced in these subjects. Following with the idea of reducing, we work a lot with this intermediate space. This is another project, not La Borda, the second one, La Balma, in the neighborhood of Poblenou. There, every time we start with a project, many times or not all the time, but many times we bring them to see other projects we did, so we can open a little bit their mindset. And they always, when they visit La Borda, they always ask, "Oh, we want this nice patio that you have." And they wanted the patio, but the plot was this size, so it's like, no way we can fit a patio here. But anyway, we work a lot with the vertical circulations and the open circulation. So there is this open corridor, this cursive, that depending on the floor you are, it changes the position, because next to this building there is a high school very close. So we had to, and there is the sun. So depending on the floor, it's in one side or the other. but it's actually the access of the 4 units that you have in each floor, and at the same time it's like their balcony. They don't have any other balcony in that case. And every time I show this project in Spain, there's a lot of fear of how things about intimacy, and having the fact of having people. I don't know if this is an issue here, but in Spain there was a lot of fear on this fact. But for me, it's always funny to hear all this resistance in something like. Obviously, in Spain, we are also used, not as much as you, but to have housing in the ground floor in the street, so you can have people you don't know passing in front of your bedroom or whatever, or your kitchen, while here it's only maximum 3 other neighbors that you know. And then there is things very easy, like curtains that you can put and close whenever you don't want your neighbor to see, And here we had a lot of all these projects, some of these projects, they've been now into a survey by the Health Institute of Barcelona. They've been surveying people before moving and after moving into these projects. And here in this project, they saw a lot of people, especially elderly people, whose mental health and their, I don't know how to say it, but their happiness, their well-being improved by the fact of feeling less lonely. And I think it's very much related to this fact that they're very visible and they're very connected to their neighbors. This is the third or fourth project, but the third in Barcelona, La Morada, that was finished 1 year ago. This is in private land bought by a foundation that we are part of it as well. And they made a call on who wanted to be the leading this project, and it's a small project. And they a group of trans, queer, lesbian women won the project, and they are now living there for a year. And again, here there is a kind of a small patio, also to separate from the party wall with the neighbors, but also we play a lot with this, using the cursive as just your balcony. Then obviously you need also to play a lot with these 3 holes, and these different layers, So now here with the putting the kitchen in this intermediate space, playing with the open corridors. And even the ground floor, That's the same project. So opening, they are in a small square, new square at the edge of the Barcelona. They are very at the limit. So they're in a very calm area. So they also open and connect a lot with the street already, because this is a pedestrian square. This is the project in Manresa, La Raval, in public land. And again, they wanted the patio. Here we managed to make a small patio in the middle, and which is the core of the building. And again, we're playing with placing the kitchens there, but also there was a big struggle to make this stair open to the patio, And I guess you have similar problems here, but in these projects we are always fighting with what people want and what regulations allow us to do, And you have to explain them and to fight there. And here, for instance, something that we wanted was that this staircase was open to the patio and invite people to circulate there and to meet and not take the elevator, because it's a very vertical building. So in order to have this nice stair open and not with fire protections and doors, we had to make a secondary stair in the 3rd floor going there. So now there is a crazy stair going there. But it was even less expensive than doing all the fire doors and everything. And we managed to give a nice presence to this opening, And all these circulation spaces, we always see it as places for encounter, Not classical corridors that you enter the house through the one door, go to the elevator, and you never cross, you never see your neighbors. the fact of having the community or most of the community beforehand also allow us to know a lot about the composition of this group. So for instance, this was La Borda before moving in, and it was funny, but it was also, it's very in the statistics as well, to see how from 28 units at that time we only had one stereotypical household, no, like 2 parents and 2 kids. Like 27 were completely different. Mostly there were people alone, couples, divorced people, families, adults living together who just wanted to live together. No, and we wanted to host all this variety and also this possibility of changes through the lifetime. No, and I think this is something that there's still a big mismatch between what both public and private sectors offer and what the society that we are living in now is the reality. No? So many times we play with these layouts. No? Here there's a couple of things to notice. The first one is that normally we play with more less hierarchical layouts. So when you see the plans of our projects, it's not like you see, oh, this is the master bedroom where the parents sleep, this is the children's bedroom, this is going to be an office. No, like normally we have rooms that are all the same size, that they have all the possibilities, all the possibilities to be whatever you want to be. And then the other thing that we have is that normally you can combine, starting from the same point, you can make combinations allowing you to make different typologies. No? So this is, for instance, the case of La Borda, where from the base, which is the yellow or the green, is 40 square meters, 2 of these rooms with the kitchen and the bathroom in the middle. People could decide at that time where to put the kitchen around this bathroom. And then you can have one of these bedrooms, and then you have or one of these rooms, and then you have 60 square meters. Or you can have 2 and you have 75 square meters more or less. No? So you can have a small, medium or big apartments, and they are combined. But the funny thing is that this can be changed in the future. No? So this is the structure that is open, and then we close it with drywall. So for instance here, you would have a drywall now closing this other room that belongs to the other apartment. And everything is prepared, like from the structure, the plumbing, the legal contracts is a separate legal contract, this part and this part, and you can change in 2 days which room belongs to another one. This has almost happened. People's been living there for 6-7 years now in La Borda. There was discussions one time to do that. This never happened because you really need to be like lucky that you need one room and your neighbor doesn't need this room anymore. However, something very interesting happened, which was that when some apartment is vacant, the first people who have the right to move in is the same people living there. No? So if you're living in a small apartment, you had a child, and a big apartment is vacant, you can move to the big apartment, and then the small apartment is open to the waiting list. And in only 6 years, because of that, there's been almost 12 moves in 28 apartments. So we had 3 people who after some years left Barcelona, so 3 apartments were vacant, and then people moved from one apartment to the other, and then people from the waiting list came. People got divorced, and both parents stayed in the building in different apartments. So we had a lot of things happening, and the nice thing is that the building was able to accommodate all these life changes, and adapt to these different circumstances. Here you can see also the funny thing is also that we have 28 apartments in the case of La Borda, that they all come from the same start point, from the same matrix, and they are all different because people could also adjust how they wanted to finish the kitchen and where to place the kitchen, whether or not to close the 2 partitions in the house. As a side note, I have to say that this customization, we are now putting into question as Lacol. So for instance, this is the second project, La Balma, where kitchens were more standardized in the middle position. You also had this variety of adding different bedrooms and changing the layout. But we were really amazed by these changes within the building. And we fear that when people customize so much their apartment, they will not move. So now people still want to make it very personalized, but we are pushing communities to keep it as universal as possible. So maybe you can change the covers, maybe you can change some things, but we're trying to convince them to keep it more universal and to understand that their house is the entire building and not the unit, because maybe in 5 years they will be living in another unit. No? So that's a discussion that we still have with the communities in each case. At the end, it's their house, so they have to decide. But sometimes we push and try to convince them and to open up a little bit. And well, I will continue. Second strategy, second point is about sharing, and these projects for us are very interesting because it's very different from more classical collective housing. So as architects, when you have a commission from a family that wants you to make their own house, you can talk to them. But if we are also doing now public social housing, or even if you do for a real estate developer, your client is not who's going to live there. Is the one who's going to sell it and they want to make as much profit as possible, or is the one who's going to manage it, so they want as less trouble as possible. No? So they are not focused on doing the best housing. They are focused on profit or having no problems. So there, with the fact that we have the communities, normally how we start, we don't start with the entire community. Normally the projects, small group approaches, and we start working with first ideas with a small group. And then when we have more or less clear the site and how many units fit there, then they open to the bigger group, and then we can discuss all these issues with the bigger group. And also we ask them normally to set up, normally this cooperatives works in commissions. So normally we tell them to have one commission in charge of architecture so they can have more discussions with us. Because there's a lot of things to discuss, but they also have a lot of things to discuss in terms of economy, on how they want to live together and so on. Anyway, so we find interesting these processes because we can also challenge what housing is and work with them what housing is and collective housing is, because collective housing is not one house on top of each other and that's it. Like you can do way more. And we also want to stress to people that housing is way more than just going to a place to sleep and to have dinner. Like there's a lot of things that we do in our houses, from things related to cleaning, to taking care, to relate to our clothes, to relate to cooking, to taking care of others, to learn, to work, to store, things related to mobility or to energy. So we discuss with communities all these issues related to housing, and we ask them how they want to solve it, at what level. So maybe certain things are very individual or individual of the household, but maybe some things they can share, maybe not with the entire community, but with some of the households, or maybe with the entire building, or maybe some things are not even needed because they are present in the neighborhood already. So sometimes when we discuss what things they want to share, it's like, oh yeah, we want to share the books and study together. And it's like, yeah, but just in front of you there is a library. So maybe you can save that and dedicate this energy and space to something else. So we discuss where they want to place all these activities, and we jump from this more conventional idea of housing that everything is solved within your private unit. We make smaller units, and this is important, that it's not that we are doing housing and then adding extra spaces, because then it would compromise affordability. So the idea is also that you shrink a little bit your house in favor to share certain things. We did some studies last 2 years ago on the housing projects of Barcelona, and we saw that it was about 10% of space dedicated to communal activities. No? And here it's also important to stress that it's not, obviously also in Spain we had community spaces in many housing projects, but usually it was for rich people having like a swimming pool or a tennis court. No? So a lot of leisure activities. Here what we are sharing is care activities as well, no? And everyday uses. So for many reasons, no? And the first one is to reduce, to save, to be more efficient. I think for you maybe doesn't say anything, but this was the most challenging thing in La Borda. Like people were very afraid of not having their own washing machine, because in Spain you have a washing machine at your home. The code requires you to have everything prepared to have a washing machine at home, and in some regions in Spain requires you to have a separate room for the washing machine, like mandatory. So it's very embedded in people's mind to have a washing machine. At La Borda now there's 2 industrial washing machines for 28 units, and when you ask people, 100% would never go back to having a washing machine at home. No? So it's also nice to change these mentalities, but not only for efficiency, but also in all these projects when we are dealing with these spaces. These spaces, when you look into conventional housing, at least in Spain, they were always given like the worst space of the house, no? Like the darkest space. Normally they wanted to make it very efficient. Even if you look at examples that we study in the faculty, like the Frankfurt kitchen, no? Like how to make it the most efficient way. So at the end, it's only that you need to move things from here, from there, how we dedicate as less space as possible. So at the end, there's only room for one person, and statistics says that this person is still a woman. No? So how we can dismantle all this thing that architecture is also helping to maintain. So the idea here is to give all these spaces, quality spaces, no? So spaces that are open, have natural light, that are visible, so you can see who is doing the activity, that are also easy to share, so that you can be with more than one person doing this activity, and that you can also do more than one thing at the same time. No? So these are not staged pictures. This is really what happens, that many people in this project, when they do the laundry, they go with the children, or they go more than one person hanging the laundry and so on. And then we have, like in many cases, there is the communal kitchen. Again, this is sometimes going against the regulations. Like we still required in Catalonia for the code, in order to be a house, you need a functioning kitchen inside of the house. In some projects, we have people who don't want an individual kitchen, and they want to share only the shared kitchen. And we are required to build the kitchen. If after we leave they want to dismantle, it's their own choice. But we need to have it there when the inspection comes. But in most cases, what happens is that people still have their private kitchen at home, and then a complementary bigger kitchen downstairs that they use for communal meals once a week or twice a week, and for their own private parties. No? And I like to explain these spaces also as communal, not only from this care perspective, but also as a luxury perspective. No? So the fact that you can have, in this space of La Borda, there's been parties thrown of 100 people. No? So how many people can you host in your house to throw a party? No? And they have a kitchen that is better than most restaurants in Barcelona. So these are things that are a luxury that you can access if you get together with your neighbors. No? Obviously, all these spaces, they also need not only the physical structure, but the social structure. No? So all this is possible because there is a social organization that manages and handles also conflict or rules and maintenance and all these issues. And these are also always opportunities to discuss, no? Because I always think when you want to design a kitchen, for instance, you go to the Neufert. No? Do you still use a Neufert as a student, or it doesn't exist anymore? This book that have all the sizes of everything, and you go there and you check. But when you have to make a communal kitchen and a communal living room, how big should it be? No? So it's always for us a nice debate on what uses, no? What community wants to prioritize in terms of uses. No? Are we going to have a wood workshop? Are we going to have a playground for children or space for yoga or whatever? No? So the discussion of what uses and how we design these spaces is always a nice debate to have. That's the same space from this La Morada, the LG, lesbian, queer, trans project. That now they finish the communal space, and it's also they normally finish their own communal spaces as La Balma. No? So in many of these projects, there's never enough money, so we always have to cut and to leave things for next phases. So many times the communal spaces are finished once people moved in on volunteer construction days. So they also learn skills and they learn how to self-build their own communal spaces. And here it was a learning. That's the second project we did, La Balma. So first we had the kitchen of La Borda, which is a very nice and very well-kept space, but it has a challenge or a problem that is very connected to the houses. So the moment that you're here, you can enter any house. So it's very problematic now to leave this space for outside organizations. No, sometimes it's done, but it's always somebody from the community has to be there present to secure the space a little bit. So that was a learning that we made, and now in the second project of La Balma, it was so easy as put a toilet there and also make a separate door, so you can separate the houses from this communal space, because at the end, these communal spaces sometimes there's moments of the day that they can be underutilized, and maybe there's organizations in the neighborhood that can profit from them. So here, for instance, there's a lot of meetings happening there. That's again La Borda. This is always in the magazines, but actually it's the less used space in the building because it's closed with polycarbonate, because we didn't have enough money to close it with glass. So in winter it's cold. It can be cold in Barcelona, I assure you. So it's not very handy. But actually at the end of the stairs, there's the most communal space use is that we have two guest rooms for visits of the people. It's quite common also in the cooperative, Swiss cooperatives, I know. But it became very, very, very popular. And finally, in this idea of sharing, we managed again to change another regulation. And now this summer we are finishing these two projects, which are very, very close to La Borda, again in public land. And they're going to be the first ones to have cluster typologies. No? So again, even smaller units where people really want to share more things like cooking together all every day and so on. So for that, we needed a change on the minimum requirements of housing. And now in Catalonia, the regulation allowed us to count the communal spaces. So this that you see in light yellow, we can subdivide and count these communal spaces as part of the unit to account for for minimum requirements of surface. And again, proving that this is going against the odds or against the collective imaginary. This is super new. No, we just changed this regulation. This is something that doesn't exist before in Spain. And here in this project, in the project of Sotrac, there was a group of people who wanted to live like that. So one floor was dedicated to this. But here, the community was very small, and it was us who proposed them, why don't you dedicate one floor to cluster typologies? And we make a call and see if anybody is interested. No? And you had to apply not as individuals, you had to apply as a group, like, hey, we are 6 households that we want to live in one of these clusters. So we had two clusters, and I think we had 10 groups who applied. No? And for something that doesn't exist in Spain, we were very surprised to see that there was such a interest. And finally, most of these projects, they also open their ground floor to social economy projects, so NGOs or foundations or other cooperatives. So many of them, they have food co-ops, like the case of La Borda, and there is a very nice synergy of how they can offer like space for a reduction price. They can secure that most of the people will buy the groceries from there. So in this way, they managed to reach other neighborhoods that it was very difficult for them to open a new branch. I know, and that's the last slide for sharing. On this idea of, I told you that people have less cars, still people have some cars. And now this is the second project we did, La Balma. They were doing a survey and a study trying to see how they could, how they were using these cars that they still have and how they could reduce 8 of their cars if they shared 6 of these cars. This is something that, again, I know that happens already in Switzerland, but I don't know any project in Spain that did manage already to incorporate the sharing. And the last bit is about this learning, and I think it's important to stress on this idea of collaboration, on collaborating with non-architects, that when we do participation, we don't believe in a participation which is only asking people, what do you think? And then that's what we do. Because we think, especially related to housing, obviously people have a lot of knowledge. We all lived, even as non-architects, live in buildings and know a lot what they want and what the problems that they have and so on. But at the same time, we all have a mindset and some ideas that we carry even without knowing and without being aware of it. So it would be very easy to reproduce things just by motion, because we are driven into it. That's why we like to question things and also to teach. And our buildings, they are very passive buildings, but we always say it's because we have active users, because that's the most fancy, smart thing that you will see in our buildings, the greenhouse that many times we use, kind of learning from Catalonia and Basel and so on. And even to me, it's too smart. I wish it could be more stupid, because all the mechanisms come from agriculture. So the moment there is a cloud, they start opening and closing. And it's like, to me, it could have a winter position and a summer mode, and that's it. But because of fire and wind, we need it to be a little bit more smart. But actually, we depend a lot on this teaching, not only hearing, but also teaching people how to how their building functions. As I said before, there's in many cases, not in all the cases, but we enjoy when there is an element of self-construction. In La Borda, there was quite a bit. Also because there was 2 wood carpenters in the community, so they could teach the others to use the tools and so on. Here the people is using the leftovers of the CLT construction to make one slab, so they did quite heavy construction. However, this is also, again, very limited on what we can do in terms of regulation. But we do a lot of training, no? And even a lot of following when we can on how the buildings are performing and how to make them perform well, no? So if you come and see La Borda, it's going to be different if you come in winter or if you come in summer. And it's funny because the users now, they learn a lot and they teach each other a lot, no? So if it's winter, this neighbor will go and tell the other, hey, you have to put your blinds up because you need the sun to get inside, so you catch the sun energy and inertia. And now they talk about cross ventilation, and they talk about a lot of things that it's very funny to hear them talk about it, no? And when people entered into La Borda, it was during winter, and it was very funny to hear because we were expecting to see if they would say things about aesthetics or about more about the design. And they were all the time talking about comfort, about temperature, about the cross ventilation. It was very interesting. And now here we still, even after some years, we were tuning certain things, and we are still monitoring 6 of the units and energy consumption. And we proved that we managed to consume half the energy of the buildings around us, and that means also half of the energy bill. Now that's money from numbers from some years ago, and to stay within the comfort zone, no? And actually, in this project, we did install heating, but most of the like from the 28 units, 24 face south, and these 24 units, most of them don't use heating at all. So now, if we would do it again, we would not have heating, and in the new projects, we only install heating in very few units. Well, and related also in this idea of knowing and talking to the community, that was part of a survey we did asking people how they lived. We asked them a lot of questions on how people live before moving in, and we were also asking about energy, and we realized, and people realized, that many people were in a situation of energy poverty, and it was super interesting because they realized, they learned that they were in a situation of energy poverty because they could not afford putting the heating in winter because there was no other than electric heating. It can be cold in Barcelona, and the buildings are not prepared. But people don't use the electric heating because of the electricity prices, no? And they learn after that maybe I'm in a situation of energy poverty, no? So that's why it was important also for us and for the communities to put a lot of effort in the energy consumption. And just to finish and to wrap up a little bit, again, as I said, this is quite new for us as a society. So something that we are doing a lot as well is taking all these learnings and trying to process them and to make them available to the public. So actually after La Borda, we helped to create this foundation called La Dinamo that supports communities, but also municipalities or people with land to make housing cooperative projects, and together with La Dinamo, we produce a lot of knowledge materials. Most of them are in Catalan, but some of them are also in English. So for instance, the first thing we did was this map on the process from the very beginning to when you move into a housing cooperative project, because it was very complicated for people to understand all the processes, no? Like from the very first meeting, they wanted to know, but how much is going to cost me, no? And how big are going to be the toilets? It's like, we're not at that stage, okay? This is going to be step 3. Now we are in this stage. We need to find this. We need to discuss this. When we have this, we will have that, no? And this is related, and these are the most important moments, no? So it was very necessary, and we as architects, we could also help to visualize something that was very complex for people. And now a lot of this material is in La Dinamo's website, that again, mostly it's in Catalan, but many of the documents are in English. I'm going to leave it here so we can have time for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your very interesting presentation. Maybe to start off, if there are any questions from the audience. I'm sure there will be some later. To start off, I was wondering, you said in the beginning that there is a lack of public support outside of Barcelona for these types of housing. I was wondering, what would you say the reason for this is? Because I'm sure the regulations also didn't allow it in the beginning in Barcelona, and you changed a lot of them. So what makes it different that in Barcelona you had the public support and outside of Barcelona there seems to be a lack of public support?
It's very interesting because we are not 100% sure to explain why. Like there's some regions in Spain that have more tradition to have social housing, like the Basque country in the north. And even there has been complicated. In some other regions, one might say that it's because the ruling parties are more conservative. But the fun thing is that even conservative municipalities ruled by conservative parties are also working with this model in Catalonia. So we are not 100% sure why. Like I think in each case has a different reason. Like in some places, for instance, Madrid was funny because I think it's also important to have first projects to open the path. No? And in Barcelona we had La Borda and another project at the same time that showed the way in an interesting moment, because it was actually a conservative party who gave the land, but then a more left party took the power and they turned it into a public policy. But for us it was very positive because we could prove it doesn't belong to any political party. It's more cross political parties. But in Madrid there was this situation that when this happened, the people who were pushing for the housing cooperative were very connected to the political party in rule, and they didn't want it to be connected in like seen as something of corruption. So they didn't give them support, and it was even more complicated for them, even if they had friends in the government, let's say. So I think in every case there's different reasons for that, but it will be a case for study.
And do you think in other societies where this process, like you say in Switzerland, is more common, do you think that your approach that Lacol has in Barcelona would also work, for example, in Switzerland or in other countries, or would you have to change certain approaches or frameworks?
I'm not sure, because I know that, again, there's a lot of people here doing similar things to what we do. So I think on one hand, it shouldn't be that different, but on the other, I do think that the fact that you have here a long tradition, big players, I'm sure that things work differently that we do. No? So for instance, one thing that we had to do that we came across after doing La Borda was that there was a lack of, that we needed this figure of people giving support to the housing cooperative to do the development, because suddenly you had a group of people who never done even the refurbishment of a toilet, and now they were dealing with a 5 million euro project, and they had to discuss with the construction companies, and they were completely lost. So actually from 20, I told you that we are 20 people in Lacol, and 5 of them, they are only doing project management for housing cooperatives. No? So they are specialized in that because we saw that we needed this figure. And I think, and it's very key figure now for us also to be a player between us, the community, and them. No? And I think here it would be totally different with the existing cooperatives that have their own technical staff. No? So I guess some things will have to change. But I think some things are common. Like when we started at the beginning, many of the responses we had was like, yeah, but we are not Nordic, we are not Scandinavian. This, like last year I was giving a lecture in a library in a neighborhood in Barcelona, and at the end an old woman approached to me and said, this will never work here. And I was telling, but I show you pictures, that like, it's working, it's fun. This will never work. She was like, so totally like, this is for Scandinavians. We are Latin, Mediterranean, people will fight, people will never agree. So I think there's more prejudice than and there's always people who want to live like that as well, no? And do things like that.
How did you start your office? That would be interesting to know. Why you put you together to decide to make such projects? Because it's not common in Spain.
Yeah, so like a little history, no, like we are all actually the founders. We are from the same year. We are two group of friends who met each other first day of the faculty, and as I was working today with Heike here. This is total opposite to the faculty of Barcelona. I don't know if any of you have been to the School of Barcelona, but we don't have places to work. Like there's no tables that you can leave your models and work day after day, you know. And you know how it is to be an architecture student, no? Like we were Wednesdays 3 a.m. in the morning working alone in our homes. So we decided to get together. Yeah, I know it's sad. To rent a place to work together our academic projects. And it was in the neighborhood of Sants, where La Borda is located. It's a very working class neighborhood, very famous for big factories that gather a lot of workers. So you had a lot of historical cooperatives. Like one of the two big unions in Spain was founded there. The oldest squat houses in Barcelona are there. A lot of anarchist movement there. So there's a lot of neighborhood organization and so on. And we were in the ground floor of what used to be a fruit shop. And then neighbors start coming in asking, what's that? What do you do? What do you sell here? No, we're architect students. And then they came to us, but we have this problem here in the neighborhood with this. We have this problem in the neighborhood with that. Why don't you help us? And we're okay. And we started collaborating with students with the neighbors as activists. And actually, when we had to do our final diploma, 4 of us chose to do our project in the neighborhood, helping the group, the community. I don't know if you know this project by architects Lleialtats and Senca. Like when you went to Barcelona, you did go there to visit it. It's near La Borda. So that was my final project. I worked with the community to do this, to convince the municipality, and they did. And we were in the jury, and we helped to choose 8 architects without knowing it was them. But this is how we start collaborating with the community, and we start realizing we like this way of working and working together. We also help a lot each other to the final project. No? So for instance, I was very bad at construction, so one of my colleagues did the construction part for me, so I did the rendering for the other. No? So we collaborate a lot among each other. And then when we finished, it was 2011 more or less, so huge economic crisis, like more than 50% unemployment of young people in Spain. So actually we were a group of 24, and of that 10 people left to Switzerland, to Belgium, to Brazil, to work. And the ones that we decided to stay, some of us had some part-time jobs, but we decided to try to open our business and to do it differently to what we did. So at the beginning, it was only 5 of us who work in the office, and then slowly, when we had more commissions, the others could leave their former jobs and get into the office. So that was a little bit the story of us. I think it's for the video, no?
So you talked a lot about how you guys kind of learned stuff from Switzerland. On the contrary, what is, in your opinion, something that we Swiss can learn from you guys, which we don't get yet?
How can I respond that without being too, I don't know, because I really don't know, because we really, like all this cluster typology is because we learn it from Switzerland and Germany, Austria. So we do learn a lot from what's going on here. my critique maybe, or what I think we can maybe shake, but I think it's already happening internally. You don't need somebody from abroad, no? But my fear that could happen also, and I've seen that in other countries, is that when this model or this way of doing housing gets more popular and gets more established, it can also get more conservative, no? And for what I read, I know that also that here happened, no? That in the 80s, cooperatives were maybe not super innovative, and there was a need of new actors to learn from this, no? And I think this is already happening internally, but that's what I like from the model in Catalonia now, that all the projects are super innovative, and each project is challenging conventional rules in a way, no? And we are always pushing. And I also think it's important to learn from other contexts, no? And we always mention a lot Uruguay in Latin America, because there they incorporate self-construction in extreme ways. Like there's a model where instead of putting money up front, you put hours of time, and people build their own houses over the years, and they do it collectively, and it's in a very nice way. They don't know, they don't divide, or they don't say whose house is going to be until they are all done, so they all put the same effort. And this is something that we're still learning from them, no? And I think that maybe this is something that Europe in general, we could also learn more about the benefits of self-construction and be less, and how these projects can challenge certain regulations. And for instance, now we are fighting, or we are suffering a lot of even environmental regulations that we could be in favor, no? Because they are for good and they are there for a reason, but maybe don't make sense or don't apply in cooperative housing, no? So for instance, acoustic regulations or air regulations, they are meant for people who don't know how to use their house, and they assume that the user is stupid and they will not be able to switch a button to switch off the mechanical ventilation, so the mechanical ventilation is 24 hours running, or they assume that they will hate their neighbor, so they don't want to hear it at all. So now we have to waste a lot of money and materials into a lot of acoustic solutions that are not needed in a place where you know your neighbor and you can talk to them and you can discuss. So maybe this is a general learning, not only for Switzerland, but for all Europe.
I have a question about who is living in your projects, because in my experience in Switzerland, it sometimes gets, those cooperatives, they get kind of exclusive for a certain group of people living there. It's affordable living space, and maybe there sometimes are people who are even more in need of this space than the people are living in who are living in Switzerland in these corporations.
Yeah, it's always a thing. Like now, all the projects I show you, and almost all the projects in the map I show you at the beginning, they are social housing. So there is a maximum of income. You cannot own any other property. So there's a certain conditions that you need to fulfill. So, and among these, you have a quite different economic spectrum, from people very at the edge and people at the upper edge. I would say that now it's mostly, like compared to the average population of Catalonia, is higher educated and less migrant population. No? And from some projects that we have data, we know that. And it's something that the sector is aware of, and they're doing things to solve it. No? Like a lot of spreading, so that it's really known that people who wants to, that there's this possibility. Also to find subsidies or to cross-subsidize, so that normally the rent is not a problem, because it's normally half the price of the average. So it's affordable for 95% of the population in Catalonia probably. But most of these projects have an initial payment that you get back if you leave, but it can be 5,000 or it can be 50,000, depending on if you have to buy the land. So for that, we are pushing the government to have specific subsidies for that. And at the same time, Cooperative, sometimes they subsidize some of the units so they don't have this burden. No? So in La Palma, for instance, there was, and in many of other projects, some units are dedicated to specific collectives and are work together with foundations working with migrants or with single mothers. And this way they try to open up to collectives that maybe they will not approach. So I know we're not there yet, but it's something that we are aware of.
Well, maybe following that question, you're talking a lot about parts of discussing of parts that are not actually architecture parts in maybe someone's opinion, but how do you see this job or the picture of an architect changing towards politics and towards this even social working? Or do you still see architects being architects and then it's just collaborating with other parts or other jobs? Or do you see the job as an architect also changing?
So I think there's still professionals that are professionals on their field and that are needed, and we are not social workers, we are not even community organizers. And there's people specialized for that. But I do think, normally when I obviously any good architect, and you know a lot of good architects from Barcelona, could do a good building. I don't think that any good architect could be able to discuss with a community, and I've seen very failed or twisted things happening there. Like we don't do it anymore, but we used to do a lot of citizen participation where we were not the designers, we were only helping the process. And then there was other architects, and it was very funny. In one case, the architect, one very famous architect that I like a lot actually, but he was showing the plan to the full group of neighbors from a neighborhood, very diverse. It was not housing, it was a public project. And he was explaining his project, and they were all super happy. Oh yeah, we love him, great, you got our ideas, whatever. But my role was to translate his project in something they could understand. So I had the project beforehand, I had visually explained different and explained the same project. And after I explained the same project, he explained they were completely angry, like, no, everything's wrong, you didn't get us. It was the same project, but he was not prepared to talk to non-architects. He was showing very nice drawings, impossible to understand to somebody who was not an architect. So I do think that there is room for architects to help these processes, but I also think it's important not to lose our profession and even not to fear. Like sometimes I also teach, and sometimes when I work with the students, they are like, no, but this we will leave it blank, open for the community to tell us what they want. It's like, yeah, but you've been studying 6 years for something. Like you can propose, it's fine. You can tell them what your ideas are. Maybe you can tell them 2 or 3 ideas and discuss it. And that's what we do also. Like in our processes, we start hearing, but then we propose. Sometimes we can propose alternatives if we see that there is several alternatives, but sometimes we propose one alternative, but we are open to discussion, and we explain it in a way that people understand it. But we are architects, so we still, people expect us to give them alternatives. On this idea of collaboration also, I think we are, that faculty, I hate architectural education. I think it's very bad in how they torture us in general all over the world. Like this is something that you see everywhere, students of architecture suffering. But at the same time, I don't know how they do it, that our brains are set in a way that we can imagine things that are not there. And I've been also working a lot with engineers and with economists and blah, blah, and I think they are way more square. And I think that our strength is that we are very open and we can see things from so many different angles and to open up so many possibilities that I see it many times that myself and my colleagues, we are always being able to propose alternatives, sometimes in things that are not even design construction, but because we have the brain set in a way different to other professions. And I think that's a strength that we have.
Maybe also building up on that, I'm sure that if more parties are able to participate in the decision making, like you said, it can lead to more conflicts. How, in general, do you avoid this from escalating? You said you propose different ideas or you try to make it as understandable as possible for the community. But I think overall, this is always the problem in participation, is that sometimes there just seem to be conflicts that you can't resolve. But obviously you have succeeded in this, so I'm curious as to what your approach to this is.
I think that it's important to have a general process making steps, no, and clear steps. No, as I was mentioning at the beginning, no, like we don't start. I think if you start one of these projects with 100 people that they don't know each other, it's very likely that you will fail. No, so we start from a small group of people that they define a basic idea, like okay, this project is going to be super sustainable, and if you don't want to be super sustainable, this is not the place for you. No, and we have projects, no, like senior projects only for elderly people, or this women-only project I was showing you. So some projects are very specific, and people have very clear ideas. Or in this project, we want to share, like the project in Manresa, outside of Barcelona, they wanted to share a lot more than other projects. No, so that was a clear vision from the first group. Then, when people join, they are on the same direction. No, and it's very common also in these projects that people leave, that the moment that things are getting more concrete, they step out and they say, maybe this is not going to their direction I imagine, and it's perfectly fine, no? Because it's better this way. So I think having this main clear vision guiding you all the time helps a lot. Then I would say it's not that hard to take to make decisions, and in some cases when we have more difficult or more opposite directions, when normally we work with this foundation La Dinamo, we also work with Sostra Civic, that is a big cooperative having several projects. But when we work with them, they have one professional who is specialized in working with groups, no? And she has the role of when there is a huge conflict, helping solving it. Otherwise, it's the same communities who organize, and they have their own, normally they call it conviviality or community group, and they deal with the conflicts and helping the process to be a little bit more smooth. And then for us, we also have our own tools, no? And for instance, in this, we now put a lot of effort at the beginning on the community spaces, because we know that people want to jump very fast to their own individual house, and we make them wait and to focus on that, because we think it's more important to dedicate to that. And in this phase, we introduced, for instance, in the last projects, a board game we designed. We designed a specific board game to decide one thing, and to make things a little bit more funny, so that it's not always super huge debates, 6 in the afternoon, 2 hours debating and discussing, no? And I think we are also good at that we can make things and make visual things and make things a little bit more casual. And with this, we help a lot. And something else we learned with the process is that it's important to, before we take the decision, to have a clear path, or a clear, that everybody knows how decisions are taken. No, some decisions are taken by the entire assembly, some small decisions are taken by this architectural commission, some decisions are taken by the architects. For instance, static decisions lately are being decided by us, because we saw that it's impossible for people to agree if green is better than blue. Like, how you debate if green is better than blue? What are the stakes that you put? So, for instance, in these things, we are we saw that it's something that people expect us more to propose than at the beginning. We were asking everything like, yeah, what's the color of the blinds? Now we just propose, and if they don't like, we discuss. But we are more proactive now. And then deciding also on how these things are decided, no? Like, what are we gonna favor? Like, because sometimes there is conflict between economy and ecology, or between privacy and smaller units and bigger communal spaces, no? So what's the priority? If we are in a deadline, in a deadlock, what are we gonna prioritize, no? So, and to also, more group managing techniques, no? Like obviously hearing more all the voices and trying to prioritize people who's not being heard or people who's not there. Like the first projects, we didn't take into account much children, and we learned from that, no? And actually the children, after we finished La Borda, there was a small community of children. Now they are more and they are older, but they made a manifesto saying that they were very angry at us. And they were right. So now we try to take into account to all these things.
So I have the question regarding the governments and how you convince them to change the law. And yes, how long does it take to change the law then, and how it affects on the project timeline? So can you start building the project, or you wait for their decision, or you put everything on the pause? So how it looks like?
It's always super complicated because it depends on the political times and everything. And the last years there's been also like sometimes like early elections, so you were discussing and then suddenly they change the government. So it's always super complicated. The good thing is that in many aspects we found very sympathetic staff from the government, so not the political but the technical staff. It's like they were waiting for somebody to make these questions. Like, yeah, finally somebody's questioning this, so come with me, and we go with the political parties and we try to convince them. No? So in some places, we did manage to find these allies that they know how things work, because we don't, and they help us to overcome these things. Sometimes they are very slow. So the parking was 2 years, and even we were trying to we were avoiding or slowing down the construction. There was a moment that we could not wait anymore, and we started the construction. I think, I'm not sure now if if the law was already approved, but we were, because it was under discussion. So I think we got a compromise. Okay, if we finish the building and the law is still not there, we will buy the parking spaces from the building next to us that needs to be built, and we will make it there. No? So we got this deal with the government while they were changing the law, because it was a super long process. Then sometimes we try to find gray areas and try to find, and the good thing is that, again, this technical staff in the government, sometimes they are helping us, telling us, you cannot do that, but if you do it this way and you tell me this is this other thing and put this other name, I will say yes. So it's not only the politicals, but the technical stuff, I think it's always been very supportive there. Because sometimes the politicals, they want to do it and they promise, but then they go to the technical, and if the technical staff is not willing to, they will block certain things, no? And so, yeah.
There are no more questions at this point. I'd like to thank you, Carlos, again for your really rich talk. The insights into Lacol's practice is amazing. Thanks to Sophie and Niels again for your questions, to everyone in the audience for listening and discussing. It's a super lively discussion. To close, the series this semester. You're all invited now to a more convivial space here on campus. We're moving things to the Elephant Bar now for a drink. As it has become customary, we'll be serving pizzas. They're on their way. I've heard, and yeah, I don't know if the sun has already set behind the Pilatus. Maybe we can still catch a few rays of sun. So yeah, you're all there in a couple of minutes. And thanks again.
Thank you. Maybe we can give the book to the first student question. Are you a student? Yes. Then it's to you. You're not a student, are you?